Do you need to read it? No. But if you're like, oh no, I'm trapped in a precarious situation and all I have is this novella, I would read it. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Nichelle, and today I'm going to be doing like a recent reads along with some of my most anticipated reads for 2025. We're going to like smush it all together. I haven't done a reading wrap up in a couple months, so this is going to include November, December, and January reads. I didn't read a ton in November and December, and then I kind of got swept up in all of the recaps I was doing at the end of the year, and so I just never got around to wrapping things up. But I still want to talk to you about the books I read then. We are going to organize these books into chunks so you can see them at the bottom. So you can like scroll the ones you're interested in. They didn't chunk super nicely. Sometimes I can like very distinctly like separate things into genres. Not so much this month, but there are some chunks nonetheless. But before we get into the books I read recently, I do want to talk to you about something that exciting that is happening to me. If you aren't aware, I'm an author. My first book came out in 2023, and my second book is coming out this year. And the Goodreads page for my new release is live, and which means we have a title and a little blurb. So my next book is called The Forest of Missing Girls. It is a horror novel. This book I would say is more of like a thriller with a little bit of like a supernatural element to it. I will link the Goodreads page below. If you use Goodreads and you want to add this to your want to read list, it is actually like super helpful to me because it makes Goodreads like take note of it and it like pushes it higher, and then it shows up in those like little Goodreads articles that are like the most anticipated books of the year and most anticipated horror of fall, you know, those sorts of articles. So if you do use Goodreads and you wanted to do me a favor, would love if you added it to your want to read books. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm sure I will be talking your ear off about it as we get closer and we have like covers and I can read you excerpts and all sorts of fun things, but I'm excited about it. I hope you're excited too. I think it'll be really fun. Okay. On to my recent reads. First section of this is going to be Dramione, and I read both of these at the end of last year. And I don't read a ton of fan fiction. Like, it's not something I am dipping into regularly, but sometimes I just get in this mood where the only thing that will like satisfy the craving is a Dramione piece of fan fiction. Okay. And I got in one of those moods in November and read two pieces, one of which was so long, and that was Remain Nameless by Hey Jude 19. This is a super slow, like Mariana Zapata wishes, slow burn. Like, they don't kiss until like the 50% mark, and I think it's like a 300,000 word piece of fan fiction, like Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. I've never read any Brandon Sanderson, but I know they're chunky. Okay, we're talking a chunky book here, and it is super slow burn. It is about Draco and Hermione, obviously. That's what Dramione stands for. And Draco, it's like it's like 10 years-ish after they've graduated. And Draco is like part of his court mandated therapy sessions, has been like tasked to like go outside. He's like doing not super well. He's really depressed, not dealing well with the like trauma post-war, and also is like very isolated because he has kind of like come to grips with the fact that his family was like kind of evil, but like no one on the good side of things wants to hang out with him because he really did help Voldemort in a real way. But so he starts going to this Muggle cafe, and he starts going like pretty regularly. And then one day he goes at a different time and he bumps into Hermione, and he's like, "Why are you at my cafe?" And she's like, "What do you mean? I come here every single morning." And from there, a friendship develops. They become friends, and then it turns romantic, and it just follows them over the course of like multiple years as this relationship unfolds. And it follows, like, once they do become romantic, it like follows their relationship and them having to like deal with the obstacles and their shared trauma. And it was just like so sweet and tender and slow. I like read it over the course of like a couple weeks, and just like it was so lovely to have this to come back to at the end of the night. The other Dramione I read, very different tonally. Which you can probably tell from the title being Bloody, Slutty, and Pathetic by What Murder. Yeah, this one is definitely spicier situation. This one I would compare. This one is like trope heavy. Okay, trope heavy. Not that the other one was like trope light, but like this one's trope heavy. We have like a mafia style romance, billionaire romance, like because Draco is like super rich, and he's also involved in like magical organized crime in this one. And it's like a forced marriage. Him and Hermione have to get married. I can't remember the exact reasoning why, but there's like some governmental magic act that they have to get married. And so they're married, and they're like enemies at the beginning of the book. It's like enemies to lovers also. Every trope you could want is in this book. It is so fun. It was just like a fun, delightful time. It is like spicy and just delightful. So if you want something like, I would say this one is like sillier too, in terms of like the billionaire and the mafia romance of it all. I would recommend this one. Okay, the things in this category that I'm really looking forward to are, there's a bunch of Dramione works that are being traditionally published this year that are like getting the like Harry Potter washed off of them and then traditionally published. I'm really excited about it. The first one that I'm probably the most excited about is Alchemized by Senlin Yu, which is Manacled. She's taking the work Manacled and republishing it without the Harry Potter element as Alchemized, as this like one book. Manacled is also pretty long, and they talked about doing it as a series, but it's just a standalone. I think it's the only standalone. I think the other two are going to be series. This is such a dark fan fiction, and I'm really curious to kind of see how it changes in the traditionally published version, but it is so good. I've read it a couple times actually, because it was just so brilliantly done. It like really beautifully explores trauma. It is a very, very dark story, and yeah, I'm just like so excited. That one comes out in September. And then another one that I'm so excited for is The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Bridget Knightley. And it was the mortifying ordeal of falling in love. Draco Malfoy and the mortifying ordeal of falling in love was the fanfiction name. And this fanfiction was just like such a beautiful rom-com. Like it had every single trope I could ever want. I was just kicking and giggling my little feet the whole time. And so again, I'm really excited to see the traditionally published version. And this one is being broken into a duology. So we're doing two pieces. So this is just part one. And then the last one is Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. Julie Soto is a fanfiction author who has transitioned to traditional publishing. She has a couple books out already. I've read her first book, and I think that was like Kylo Ren and Rey fanfiction. I've never seen Star Wars, but I really liked that one. That was the one with like the wedding planner. And I haven't read the Dramione fanfiction that this is based off of. So I'm excited to see that. This one's going to be a trilogy. So catch me reading all of them this year. They're on my most anticipated list. Okay. Next, in the category of like rom-coms but not. I guess we call this like women's fiction. Rom-com adjacent books. I have two books that like are not really romance novels, but like are sort of close. They could have been, but the authors didn't want them to be. The first one is The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This book was like everywhere last year, and I had to read it. It has a cute cover. The basic premise is this woman comes home from a bachelorette party. She's going to her friend's bachelorette party. She's a single lady. She comes home, and there's a man in her house. And the man is like, "Hello, I'm your husband." And she's like, "What the heck? Who the heck are you?" And she like quickly realizes like he is her husband. She has like photos in her phone and like a wedding album. And she's like, that's so weird. I don't remember him. And she comes to find out that her attic is magic. Every time her husband goes up into the attic, when someone comes back down, it's a new husband. And she gets to live all these like different versions of her life essentially as these husbands rotate through, and she gets to see all of like the men and lives she could have lived and if she married these people. It is a really interesting concept. It is so deeply unemotional. That sounds kind of cold, but I think when I was like picturing the story, when you like hear the premise, you're like, oh, she's gonna get like really attached to one husband, and then like this is like a love story of them like falling in love in every version of her life. And it's just like not that. Like it's deeply unromantic in a lot of ways. But it's so interesting. I thought it was so well done. It was fun, it was interesting. But if you're looking for something that's like emotional, not this one. And the other one I read that is definitely like more of a classic rom-com, but I would say a little different, is Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. This is the story of a female writer on like a fictionalized version of SNL who ends up having this like COVID relationship with a celebrity who was on the show a few years back. They had like some chemistry when he was on the show, and then they wind up emailing during COVID, and there's like a big chunk of the book that is emails between them, and then like a romance unfolds from there. And it like follows a general normal like romance plot structure, but I would say it's kind of like when I was like writing it, I kept trying to find the right word. I kept saying like grimy and gritty, and that's not right. It's not like she's like a celebrity living in a gorgeous house with a pool, okay, and she's like not poor. She's not like wealthy, but like she's like doing fine. It's just like a little bit, I guess, like it has a little less of the like sparkle you would expect from a rom-com. Like its focus, I think, is more on like a little bit more realism, although the situation is still like quite outlandish. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, and I think it would make a really good movie. I feel like it gives me similar vibes to Nobody Asked for It. No, Nobody Asked for This. Is that the name of that Netflix TV show? I actually haven't seen it. Okay, I've seen trailers and a random half episode in like the middle of the season, but it gives me similar vibes to that based on what I know of it. What am I excited for? What am I not excited for in this category? I had to like really restrain myself to just like the things I'm most excited for. And they're probably things you've heard of, okay? Because I am nothing if not a girl who loves popular fiction, okay? And so, yeah, number one on this list is, you could have guessed it, the new Emily Henry. I'm over the moon excited for Great Big Beautiful Life. I think Emily Henry's kind of like pitched it as like less rom-com-y than her other books and a little bit more like broadly focused on the story, which sounds great. It sounds pretty adjacent to beach read, and I'm a beach read girl. This one seems like it could be a new favorite Emily Henry. I mean, it would be hard to beat beach read, but like this is sounding like really quite promising. Then I'm also excited for Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is, if you're not familiar with Taylor Jenkins Reid, where have you been? She wrote the Famous Women series, so Daisy Jones and the Six, Evelyn Hugo, Carrie Soto, and Malibu Rising. This one's about space. This is about a female astronaut who goes to space, obviously. And I think it's in like the 1980s. I'm excited. I love space. Who doesn't? I mean, I haven't personally been there and have no desire to go there, but I like the idea of space. I like the concept of space. I like women in STEM. It's very Ali Hazelwood of her. I'm going to read it. I'm going to be excited. I didn't write this one down, which is unfortunate because I think it has a long title. But I'm really excited for the new Jessa Hastings that's coming out, I think, this spring. I think it's the soonest to release. I think it's coming out soon. I love Jessa Hastings. She wrote the Magnolia Park series. I enjoyed her fantasy novel Never too, although I do wish she was writing Daisy Hates 3 instead of writing this, but like beggars can't be choosers. I'll take it, Jessa. Sorry for the complaints. I'm excited. It seems to be more in line with Magnolia Parks, but I do believe it's a standalone. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what it's about, but I'll read anything Jessa puts out. On to my next section, which is just called Books by Men. Do they have anything else in common besides the fact that they're books by men? No. But I'm going to tell you about them. First thing I read was Stephen King's most recent short story collection, You Like It Darker. This collection was great. I thought it was excellent. I really enjoy a Stephen King short story collection in general. They're normally a good time. This one felt distinctly like it was written by an old man. Which makes sense. I mean, Stephen King is at this point in his mid to late 70s, and like I don't share a lot of interests with old men, but I still really enjoyed the collection as a whole. Like it was still quite good. I wrote down, I like individually rated all the stories, and there were some of them I did not like at all. I gave some 1s and 2s, but my favorites that I gave 4 or 5 to were Two Talented Bastards, The Fifth Step, Old Slide In Road, Rattlesnakes, The Dreamers, and The Answer Man. I loved The Answer Man. The Answer Man actually made me cry. So shout out to Stephen King. Definitely really good. If you love a short story collection, especially a Stephen King short story collection, would recommend. The next one I read was The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I read Between the World and Me back in like 2018. I think I read it I was in Italy with one of my friends, and I read it on the train between Rome and Florence. So I have like a very distinct memory of reading it. And it really fundamentally like changed the way I thought about like race in America. I think it is a really brilliant book. I think it is, and profoundly important. I think people will read it for like generations and centuries to come because I think it's really important. The Message is his like latest nonfiction release. His latest release in general. He wrote a novel between these two, which I haven't read. And this one is focused on writing and his relationship to like writing and the ideas of like truth. And I think particularly I was struck by the ideas around the importance of writing and these pieces of work, whether he's particularly talking about nonfiction writing, but I think fiction writing as well, these pieces of work that deeply interrogate like the systems with which we live under. And it's told as a letter to his writing students that he teaches at Howard University. And it's told in a couple parts. We get a section on him going to Africa, well, to Senegal particularly, and his relationship to kind of this mythologized Africa as a Black man living in the United States. He has a chapter on him traveling to South Carolina to support this teacher who's fighting a book ban against his first book. And then the last section is on Palestine, and the longest section. And I think the section that has been getting the most attention because, of course, all of the things that were happening with Israel and Palestine this past year. And I just thought it was really, really, really fantastic. I would highly recommend it. I listened to the audiobook. He narrates it, and he does a really brilliant job. I don't really have any anticipated books by Ben. If you have any that I should put on my list, let me know. I looked. Nothing that really stands out. I'm sure I'll read some. I'm like not against a book by a man. Not my priority. Okay. Next, we're in our longest section, which is just Kindle Unlimited romances. And I want to make this my year of Kindle Unlimited romances. When I look back at like 2021, which is my best reading year ever, I was reading so many Kindle Unlimited books. But it also meant that because I was in the habit of reading, I was also reading like a lot more like literary fiction and things like that as well. Like it just got me reading more. But I think the Kindle Unlimited books, because they're so easy, they like are good practice for my brain. Because focusing is hard, okay? Focusing is hard. And I just want to be reading more this year, and I love them. They're fun, okay? So I'm going to tell you all of them. Also, if you have any recs for me, I will read romantasy. I will read contemporary romance. I'm less into like a KU thriller, but if you know some authors that you should think I should try, willing to give it a shot. But like contemporary romance and fantasy romance tend to be my go-to genres on the old KU. And when I'm talking KU, I know that there's like a lot of traditionally published books that like cycle in and out of KU, but there's those authors that like, they're KU authors. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about here. Okay, let's go through them. First, I read My Rules by T.L. Swan. This is the second book in the like neighborhood series by T.L. Swan. It is like this wealthy neighborhood, and all the men who live in this cul-de-sac are hot and single. Well, they won't be single by the end. They're all getting matched up. In this book, we're following this woman who lives in the cul-de-sac, and she's recently gotten separated from her husband, and she's trying to keep the house, but it's like really a little bit too expensive for her, so she's dealing with all of that. And then also her next door neighbor and her, he's a single man, are like friends, but like they're interested in each other, obviously. This book series I want to like more than I actually do. I find the first one and this one, I found the books to be just like a tinge too long. And normally I have no complaints about a long book. Like I will sit and read for as long as you want me to, these KU books, but I just kind of got bored. And that is the biggest crime you can commit to me in a Kindle Unlimited book, is if I get bored at all. Okay, I know that's not everyone's biggest crime. Some people care about realism. I care 0% about realism. But I want some more excitement if we're going to do a longer book. And this book series was just, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to continue in it, even though T.L. Swan and the Miles High Brother series is one of my absolute favorite Kindle Unlimited series. If you read the series, let me know your thoughts. Should I continue? Okay, 2. Well, these are 2 books. 2 books in the next one, because I read the whole duology in a single day. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen my like story graph, and you see this like huge spike on January 4th. That's me reading Champagne Venom and Champagne Wrath, both of them by Nicole Fox. I got these from Beach Read and Bubbly's book recommendations. She calls these books Brad's Beach Reads After Dark, because they're like a little spicier. This is a mafia romance, which is one of my favorite subgenres on Kindle Unlimited. I love a mafia romance. I love a billionaire romance. This is like a duology, so if you read both of these, it's complete. What winds up happening is the woman in this book winds up having like a one-night stand with this guy, and she gets pregnant from it. At the time, she doesn't know this guy is also like a mafia boss. But she goes to work the next day at this new job she's gotten at this new office, and who is her boss but the guy she had a one-night stand with and now is pregnant from. And he like finds out she's pregnant, and he finds out it's his baby, and he has to marry her. And so now it's like a accidental pregnancy, forced marriage, mafia romance. And I had a great time. No notes. Do I remember much? No, I had to look at the synopsis to remember even those details, but like I said, a delightful time. Then I read Flawless by Elsie Silver and Powerless by Elsie Silver. I read Heartless, the second book in the series, a couple years ago. That one is like the single dad romance in this one, and people love that one, and I tried that one, enjoyed it, and I just like never got around to reading more, but I finally entered Chestnut Springs. And if you just see me reading Elsie Silver for the next 2 months, just like back to back to back, mind your business. These are all surrounding like brothers or relations, you know, like people around this ranch in Canada. They live just outside of Toronto, Vancouver, I don't know, a city in Canada. And yeah, we're following, the first one follows, I don't know, I didn't write his name down, but the oldest brother, I think, or maybe second oldest brother in Chestnut Springs. And he's a rodeo star, and he winds up getting into a relationship with the daughter of his like agent. She's like coming, or maybe PR manager, I don't know. She's like coming to keep an eye on him because he's stirred up this like big drama because he talked bad about milk, and milk is one of his big sponsors. So she comes to keep him in line. Then they obviously fall in love. No notes. Then I read Powerless. Powerless is both a hockey romance and a cowboy romance. Get you a book that can do both. And in this one, he is the like adopted brother of all of these boys. So he's like a lot of family trauma because like something happened when he was a teen. We learn more about it throughout the book. And he falls for their cousin. So not his cousin. Don't even worry. But they like kind of grew up around each other. She would come and spend her summers on the ranch, and she always like had a crush on him when they were little, but like she's like 4 or 5 years younger than him. And so like when you're a kid, that's like a huge age gap. And so they didn't hang out. But she is from like a super wealthy, like well-to-do, proper family in Canada. And they all live in Canada. I don't know why I added in Canada. And she is getting married off to this guy, but she doesn't really like him. And she winds up running away at the altar. She winds up running away with Jasper, the hockey player, at the altar. And then they like hang out together. It's cute. It's fun. I had a great time. Then I read a novella. I read Cruel Winter with You by Ali Hazelwood. I had plans to read this entire novella set from Amazon. They like love to put out holiday sets of like their romance authors, and like these little like short story novellas kind of right in between length. They're like an hour each if you're gonna listen to the audio. And I started it on Christmas Eve and I finished it like January 6th. Like, why did it take me so long? I think it was like 90 pages, if that. This one is cute. It actually has a really similar plot to Powerless, and that it's Christmas. Christmas wasn't Powerless. This is the Christmas edition to this. But it is like it's best friend's brother trope. These two, like when they were kids, she was like best friends with his younger sister, and they were like neighbors. And then she comes to his house to borrow the ham pan or something, but then she gets snowed into his house. You're welcome. This plot is making so much sense, I can tell. Anyway, it was cute. Do you need to read it? No. But if you're like, oh no, I'm trapped in a precarious situation and all I have is this novella, I would read it. I've only read this one of the collection because, like I said, I finished this like January 6th and was no longer in the mood for more Christmas stuff. I don't really have any anticipated reads because I feel like I'm really behind. These KU authors be putting out books like hecka fast, and I'm really behind. I know I want to continue in the Chestnut Springs, finish up the Chestnut Springs series, and then like there's like the Wild Eyes, Wild Love series by Elsie Silver that I think I'm gonna dip into, and also I want to finish up the Windy City series. I've read the first 2 books in that series. Would love to continue. If you have any other recommendations, please let me know. I am always up for a good KU romance. Okay, and then my last category is my absolute favorites from the last few months. First one is a weird one, but I loved it so much. And that is John Proctor is the Villain by Kimberly Bellflower. This is actually a play, and so it's like a really fast read. I think I read it in like maybe an hour and a half. And it is a play that centers around this like high school classroom as they read the play The Crucible, which is, if you're not familiar, a play around like the Salem witch trials, but it was written in the 1950s when we were dealing with like the Red Scare. So in that situation, the witch trials are like what's it called? I don't know. It's about communism, sort of. Anyway, these girls are reading it now, and like I think it's supposed to take place in 2018. And while they're reading it, they're kind of like grappling with their own lives and the fact that like witch hunts are often used. Men will like use the language around witch hunts with like the Me Too movement. They're like really kind of putting together how they feel about that and their own experiences, and then like their parents talking about things. And there has been some stuff that has come out in the town about some of like the men and some crimes that they're accused of. Some of these girls have like relationships to the men, both like positive and negative relationships to a lot of these men in the novel, both like fathers and teachers. And it's just about them kind of unpacking who gets to decide who the heroes and who the villains are in their own lives, and finding this real sense of like camaraderie with their peers through these kind of like tumultuous times. I did a terrible job of explaining it, but it's absolutely brilliantly done. I think Kimberly Bellflower also does such a great job of incorporating pop culture. I think pop culture can be a really hard thing to do in novels. I think it's one of the hardest things to do like modern-ish pop culture, because we all have such individual experiences with pop culture, and those experiences can shift really quickly as our narratives around these pieces of media change. There is a scene in this novel that like centers around Lord's song Greenlight, and it is just like so moving. I like cried in it because it was just like so beautiful. And then my other favorite of the month was Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. I finished this book on the very last day of January. It was such a delightful read. I was so glad. I'm gonna tell you a little secret. I didn't really like Iron Flame. I really had a rough time with Iron Flame. I felt like it was too long. I felt like it dragged. I got bored in the middle. I was just like sick of it last year, and I was really worried that Onyx Storm would follow in the same path, because I really did enjoy Fourth Wing. It's not like my favorite series, but like I enjoyed it, and Onyx Storm was so fun. It was much more dragon centered than Iron Flame, which I think was my big problem. Like, I'm here for the dragons pretty much. Okay, I have a vlog coming out hopefully soon. I'm working on editing the last few pieces of it that talk about my overall thoughts on Onyx Storm, so I won't go into too much detail, and I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't read that far in the series, but like I really enjoyed it. And then the things I'm most anticipated for that are like by favorite authors. I know I already talked about some of these. These are mostly fantasy. I think these are both fantasy books, actually. Both by authors that I've read and loved before, and that is a new V.E. Schwab. I've only read Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I really need to get into her backlist because I love Addie LaRue. Addie LaRue has such a special place in my heart. But I think her next release, this is the things she's written. I don't think she wrote anything between now. I don't know. I'm saying no words that don't make English. We'll try again. Her new book is called Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and I know not a single thing about it, but I'm excited for it anyway. I think someone at some point told me about it. I think it maybe follows like 3 different timelines and like 3 different women in 3 different historical periods. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm going to read it. And then the other thing that I'm truly so excited for, like, if I'm only going to pick up, well, that's not true. I'm going to pick up the new Emily Henry. If I'm only going to pick up one thing on this list, it's going to be the Emily Henry. If I'm only picking up 5 things off of this list, this is in the top 5. And that is Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. I loved Babel. Obsessed with Babel. Think about Babel once a week. And this seems like in line with that. I also liked Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, and I haven't read The Poppy Wars, but Catabasis is like a dark academia sort of thing in which these students have to go into hell to go get their academic advisor. It kind of feels like R.F. Kuang's take on what's that Lee Bardugo series called? The second one's Hellbent. The first one is not something else. I'll pop it up. You can look at it. But I think it seems kind of similar to that story in terms of premise, and I'm really excited. I think it'll be really fun because it seems like it might have some stuff in common with Babel. And I love R.F. Kuang critiquing academia. That's when I think she's at her best. So really excited about that. I have so many books that I'm looking forward to. I am going to manifest that this is going to be my best reading year ever. Maybe not ever. Better than last year. Lower our manifestation goals. My goal is to read like 100 books for the year, and I am already 2 books behind on that. So, maybe we should lower our sights just slightly. But I think it's going to be a great reading year. I'm so excited to share it with you. So excited to recap a few more things, to chat about all of the books, to share my book that's coming out at the end of this year. It's going to be so fun. Okay. I will talk to you in the next one. If you have any recommendations, please leave them down below. Okay.